Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony, which today commemorates the service and sacrifice of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in the Australian Defence Force. We acknowledge the original custodians of the land in which we meet today, the Ngunnawal people, and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also welcome all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today or who are watching the live stream. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Michael Andrews. We're honoured to welcome General Angus Campbell, Chief of the Defence Force of Australia, Ms Catherine Jones, representing the Secretary of Defence, and the accompanying senior defence leaders. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is birth by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every state advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops at Gallipoli and stayed with them on the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Thomas Gray. Tom Gray was born on the 14th of April, 1905, to Richard and Ida Vickers of Onslow, Western Australia. His father was a labourer and a horsebreaker in the district. His mother was an Indigenous woman whose family lobbied for recognition of citizenship of Aboriginal people. His father died when he was 8 years old, and his mother later remarried. Ida was a strong advocate of education as a way to gain acceptance in Australian society. Tom, the third of the 7 children, developed a deep love of poetry as a result. He could reportedly recite more than 100 different poems. Tom Gray became a drover and a bushman, and he continued writing poetry, often on the sides of water tanks or old windmill blades. By the mid-1930s, Tom Gray was working at Anna Plains Station and was a respected racehorse trainer. He was gentle and patient with the horses and was in demand in the district for his droving skills. Unusually for someone of Aboriginal descent at the time, Tom Gray became a relatively affluent man and a popular man of society in northern Western Australia. He had 3 children with 2 different women, making his home with Yarni at Anna Plains. Tom was well known for his generosity of spirit, sense of humour, and his philosophical bent. Tom Gray enlisted in the Australian Imperial Forces in August 1940. To commemorate the occasion, he wrote a poem, part of which reads, "We've finished now with the riding down those lonely cattle trails. We're through with the swapping stories, watching the riders from the rails. The moleskins and the leggings that were sweaty, old and torn are discarded for the glory of the khaki uniform." Private Tom Gray underwent a period of training at Northern in Western Australia before leaving for active service overseas with reinforcements to the 2nd 16th Battalion. He was a popular campmate, and his comrades later recall him reciting poetry, such as "The Man from Snowy River" and "Playing Tour." Gray arrived in the Middle East in May 1941, where his battalion was playing a largely defensive role along the Egypt-Libyan frontier. Shortly after Gray arrived, the battalion was withdrawn to the Palestine to prepare for the participation in the invasion of Syria and Lebanon. On the 8th of June 1941, the 2nd 16th Battalion took part in an attack against the well-entrenched Vichy French troops. By early that month, the battalion had fought its way to Damour in Syria. On the 6th of July 1941, the 2nd 16th Battalion took part in an operation to capture the Vichy-held town and the nearby fortified positions. In the early hours of the morning, under a heavy lifting artillery barrage, the men of the 2nd 16th attacked at Al Etika and, despite a stubborn defence, were able to capture their objectives. As the advance slowed, Private Tom Gray was escorting some prisoners to the rear when he was spotted by an enemy machine gun. He was fired on and killed instantly. Tom Gray was buried in the Beirut War Cemetery, where his remains lie today under the words, "In loving memory." Sadly missed by mother, brothers and sisters, he was 36 years old. A poem written by Tom, Crosses, was published in the Australian Imperial Forces News after his death and was repeated in some of the newspapers in Western Australia. It reads in part, "Each life has its crosses and a soldier gets his share, from a trip across the ocean to that envied Croix de Guerre. There are crosses by the censor, far too many, so it seems. There are crosses in the letters from the girlfriend of his dreams. There's a cross that's worn by heroes who have faced a storm of lead. There's a cross when he is wounded. There's a cross when he is dead. Tom Gray's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Thomas Gray, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you all for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.